So if you have a tiny audience and you want to get clients and you realize that it is harder than ever to compete just based on service, deliverables, all that sort of stuff, I'm going to show you exactly how I create content in a way that really doesn't try and be an influencer, doesn't really try and like go crazy viral and that sort of stuff. I've never gone viral, and I've gotten over half of my clients from content, social posts, and all that sort of stuff. So what I'm going to do today is basically demo exactly how I do that. You don't need to be a rocket scientist. You don't need to be an amazing copywriter. You don't need to be even amazing with sales and all that sort of stuff. Know that anytime you post a piece of content, whether 50 people see it or 5 million people see it, that it's going to hit right on the button for the person you can serve. So let's dive into it, right? Basically, here's how I produce content I know my audience loves. Create 3 posts from one idea and get clients even if a post only gets 8 likes, which is pretty much how my content goes. If you look at, say, my Instagram and check my profile, you can see I don't have this massive audience by any means. I'm just south of 4,000 followers and that sort of stuff. But 6 likes here, 5 likes here, 11 here, 7 here, 9 there, 13 there, just 1 here. So as you can see, but my content gets clients, right? So the first thing I'll say when it comes to creating content, if you're new to this game and that sort of stuff, like you've been so in the weeds with serving clients that you haven't really had time to create your own stuff, is this is designed to like get you quickly content to where even if you don't post every day, it's going to get you into a really good cadence to where you feel really comfortable actually like getting stuff out, and you don't have to invent anything. I can tell you right now, which if you don't know who I am, my name is Colby. Welcome to the channel. I run a business called Autonomy. And inside of there, I am working one-on-one with founders, rolling up the sleeves, basically a business partner without equity, really focused on the nitty-gritty human problems. Instead of hopping into a program and say, hey, watch all my videos and that sort of stuff, we actually dive right in with like what we call a North Star document. And it is just a custom document to go and hit your goals, head towards your North Star, right? So, this is something that I want to communicate directly to those people, right? In terms of when I create content. And chances are, if you're not some crazy influencer or don't have years and years of content under your belt, I only have 18 months of content creation under my belt, 19 now, and I still feel like a total novice beginner with it, then this is for you. Because if you need a starting point, you can't, and you're already serving a ton of clients, you can't commit to spending, you know, 20, 30 hours a week, like the people you'd be competing with, who are doing content basically full time to and expect the same result, right? So this is not going to be something that helps you like go viral or hit what's called the top of funnel, right? Because simply just have too many constraints and not enough skills to hit the top of funnel. But I know how to speak to my target customer very, very directly and very, very well. So that's what this serves as. So let's actually dive in, because first thing, how do I produce content I know my audience loves? How do I know my audience is going to love it? Well, we're going to start with an asset, right? So inside of Autonomy Club, which is the group I serve in terms of my clients, and they hop on group calls and that sort of stuff, we have this thing called the Power Call every Tuesday, right? And so on the last Power Call, only a couple of clients were there, but it was so impactful, so good that I was like, you know what? I think this is going to be an amazing like jumping off point in terms of creating stuff for my audience, right? Those 3,900 people on Instagram, I've got about 7,000 on LinkedIn, and only around 300 or so on my email list. So I don't have this massive audience, but I was able to get 18 clients from content last year. Content basically transitioned into a coffee chat, and then we went from there, right? So I'm going to show you as much as I can with that. But essentially, you need an asset to start with. Instead of scrolling your feed and thinking of amazing hooks, or instead of basically downloading some sort of guru's template framework or whatever, none of this involves that at all. Really, what we're going to do is we're going to take what I do best, which is converse with clients, right? And so when I'm conversing with clients, I'm not thinking of how do I make this hook stand out? I'm not thinking of how do I go viral? I'm just there in the moment, just being useful, right? And that's where my clients get the most value. And that's why I do a high touch one-on-one offer instead of like this massive group coaching community thing, because it's just not my skill set. And I don't want to be someone who is like giving low touch to 100 people. I'd rather give high touch, like I'm in your own business, your problems are my problems, with like 20 people, right? And so when I'm in conversation, that is like my number one skill set. So the first rule basically is like, what are you already amazing at? Is it conversing with your clients like me? Is it actually like emailing back and forth? Is it internal ideating with your team? Like, are you amazing at stand-ups with your staff and that sort of stuff and can lead that group? And then a lot of good ideas come out of that, right? Just use whatever is like readily available to you. I will say the most potent one for this model is speaking with a client directly, because your client's going to give you real problems. And obviously it's 2026, so you can record the transcript. So what we're going to do, and what I created, the first tool is what I call the transcript gold miner, right? And the whole point of this GPT that I custom created is not just to say, hey, what are the highlights from this transcript? What are the most important things from this transcript? It does that absolutely. It is basically made elite by two extra things, though. One is that I have 100% trained it on how I speak, how I think, and really go into like core values and beliefs, right? So there's this wonderful phrase that content fills space, POV shifts minds. And for someone with a tiny audience, that is like a Bible doctrine, right? Because without your point of view, you really can't like actually separate yourself very much. And so, for instance, the system I'm going to use today is something that helped me write a piece of content where I had a coffee chat with a founder locally who said a friend of his, not even him, a friend of his was running an agency and was spending 5 to 10 hours a week in talking to clients on meetings and then creating custom reports, right? To where I have personal experience with that after a decade of being in the digital marketing space, to where meetings were killing me too. And I have a personal experience with how do I solve that problem, right? And so that's where I created a piece of content to where I had this problem, which was the same as that person. Here's how I solved it in 3 simple steps, as an example, right? And so that POV separates, instead of how to eliminate meetings, here's how I eliminated meetings. Here was the result of that process. And here's the first step you can take if you like this process, as an example. It's a lot more wholesome, okay? So, step one, do like find something you're already good at, right? I'm really good at conversing with clients. So I created this transcript gold miner. I think chances are, if you're still watching this video, you're really good at speaking to clients. So let's dive in and see how this thing really works. Because the first elite thing is like core values and beliefs. The really fun part about this GPT is that it will actually compare the transcript I'm about to drop in here to other transcripts I've already uploaded in the same conversation. And that is very important because its main idea, more or less, is to eliminate deep thinking on my side of things and just tell me exactly what to write about, what to talk about on Instagram, what to talk about on YouTube. One of them is going to stand out because it's going to say, it's like specifically designed to basically be like, this has come up numerous times. Talk about this, give your point of view on this, that sort of stuff. So let's actually download this bad boy, take it right from the Google Doc from the meeting. Here's the transcript, put it in there. And we'll just say, here's a new transcript. Let's cook, as an example, right? And we'll drop it in there. So now it's basically going to pull all of the good stuff, extraction for the new group call, and now it's going to say call number 4. So this is a newer conversation. I tested this a lot, but basically what it's talking about is, hey, what's the core tension? People don't want freedom from work. They want freedom from the wrong work. That's already like a hook right there, as an example, right? So you can see how good this is. It's no longer about control. It's about depth. Then it breaks down surface and root problems. So something on the surface would be like, here's what the client says, but it is specifically designed to like go deeper subtextually and say, via those exact words, here's what we think the root cause is, right? So here's some surface struggles. Big to-do list. It's the second week of January, so they felt like they lost the first week of January. They feel like it's hard to delegate, too many tools, that sort of stuff. But what are the root struggles? I feel like I'm misplacing my effort, or that I'm productive, but it feels false, or I am doing a lot, but it's completely misaligned. So I'm just like scaling misalignment. That's a big one inside of my community, as an example. Over optimizing for autonomy instead of fulfillment. So this is an interesting one. I would actually need to evaluate that one a little bit. Confusing simplification with disengagement. That's something I would have to refine a little bit, but yeah, a lot of clients think that if it's too simple, then they're not doing enough, right, as an example. And so why this persists: minimize involvement, maximize alignment. And then here we go. So now we're talking about what are their explicit desires. Kind of amazing things here. This is exactly what our North Star document solves inside the community for my clients when we do one-on-one meetings. fewer meetings, but better ones. And then here are some items I could potentially talk about in terms of what happens if you don't solve this problem. What happens if you have too much misalignment? What happens if you think that doing more equals earning more instead of actually like simplifying and aligning, which is what we work on a ton, right? So the key reframe, exact quote. Then it's going to pull out any exact quotes that were like clearly and obviously something I should be talking about in my content. So it's like, I'm not craving less time to work. I'm just craving less stuff I don't want to do and more stuff I do want to do, right? So that is something that I could absolutely hit on in content. And then it actually says, here's why it hits, because it dismantles the entire freedom lifestyle. A lot of the freedom lifestyle and what my clients understand over time is that it's really not about working less. Working less is kind of a misnomer, because if you're working on passion driven work, it is all consuming in a positive way. You want to work on it almost all the time. You just want to work on the things about it that you like and not the things you don't, right? So if you really, really like talking to people, it might absolutely annoy the hell out of you when you have to spend 3 hours doing your bookkeeping, right? Or if you really, really like content and you don't like being on meetings, then it might absolutely kill you if you're having 6 internal meetings a week, right? So it's not about working less. It's about using those hours that we all have the same amount of towards something that drives your purpose and not just busy work, right? So that means success means working less is actually being disrupted here. It doesn't mean working less. It just means working on what you want to the majority of the time, right? As an example. So a reframe, it's not about time, it's about the choice of problems. And I talk about autonomy all the time, obviously, because that's the name of my business. All right. So here's another exact quote. I don't want to be known as someone who runs a community. I want to be a business partner without equity. And that was me. That was me. I was actually introducing this North Star document to a couple of my clients on this power call, and they loved it. Right. And so that was me saying, hey, my work as like a business mentor and coach is technically only a year old. So I'm at the stage now here in January where I have data now to compare it and say, how do I get client results quicker? How do I make it feel more aligned with me and that sort of stuff? And the reality is I didn't want to run a community where it felt like I was just kind of a network with benefits. I wanted to get nitty gritty inside of people's businesses. And that kind of is what sets me apart in the coaching space a little bit is a lot of coaches want to get you in the program and have you watch all their videos so that they don't actually have to talk to you that much because it builds massive leverage for them. And it's an amazing model. It absolutely is. It's just one of those things where I actually love the human problems. I actually love like, when a client sends me an email from a difficult client and we can actually work through the wording together. I absolutely love when a client has a business partner that they might not be seeing eye to eye on, and I have experience with that, and just kind of guiding them through these really choppy waters a little bit. Like, I've been told since I was 15 that I should have been a pastor or a therapist. And I always joke, I swear too much to be a pastor, and I'm not interested in going to school for that long to be a therapist. So I get to apply my natural skill set by getting more nitty gritty with businesses, right? Which I really like, instead of say, hey, here's this massive course, just watch a video on X, Y, and Z, right? I would much rather my clients actually message me than me send them a video. And if you are some guru saying, well, that's not scalable and that sort of stuff, great. I don't want it to be right now. This is what I want to do, right? It's fully aligned. So um, more and more of that too will reach into the content, right? So that's just a quick sidebar on this sort of stuff. So the essence reframe, reinforced from earlier calls. See, this is something that the GPT crushes, is that, hey, this is becoming a theme, is that conviction is built before the market, not after. A lot of people think that once something works, then they'll feel belief, and then it will feel easier and lighter and more purposeful. And that is, I found, never to be the case. You need to have total conviction and belief in what you're doing before you get the result, because then the result becomes a natural occurrence because of that conviction. All right. So, problem and solution sequences. Sequence one, overwhelmed to a single source of truth. That was us getting into the North Star document as an example, so that I always knew exactly where the client's business was at, and we're only working on one thing at a time. The person with 10 priorities has none, right? So we're working on one priority at a time, and it's in writing, and we're both working towards the same goal to make sure that they hit it, right? Tool fatigue, we talked about that. Yep, pricing anxiety. All of this stuff is amazing in terms of content I could be producing, right? But then what it is specifically designed at the end here is to basically say, hey, here's some content ready posts using point of view. Again, content fills space. POV shifts minds. So it's like, it's not about working less, it's choosing better problems. I have a personal point of view on that. If your to-do list stresses you out, it's lying to you. That's a little bit GPT woo-woo in terms of a hook, but I could talk about that because I have personal experience going from the classic to-do list of like 30, 40 items on it every week to I basically only have one to-do list item every single day, right? Which makes it a lot easier. So I can teach that plus a system. Premium isn't a price. It's how early you make people feel seen. So a little woo-woo again, but you get the idea. And then here we go. A red alert category defining. This is getting more and more pattern driven, like as in this comes up all the time. This is now undeniable across all the transcripts. People prefer one-on-one to many. They prefer judgment over specific frameworks. They prefer conversation over just specific content. And they prefer alignment over just nonstop optimization. That is my type of client. They want someone in the trenches with them. They don't want someone to say, go watch this video and then get back to me, right? So dominant patterns, this sort of stuff, common themes, this sort of stuff. So as you can see, this is just like an absolute treasure trove of stuff that we can go in on, all right? So advisor insight, what this suggests about your category, what's becoming unavoidable. Again, I want the lift for me as the business owner to be creating content as low as freaking possible, right? I don't want to have to invent new content. There's another phrase that says, document, don't create. And so what does this essentially do? It's a document like on steroids, essentially, because it's a real conversation that I have with clients. It's outlining all the themes. It's comparing this one conversation to other conversations I've had with clients. And then it's creating those pillars of being like, just talk about this. So again, I don't have to think. I just think, okay, what exactly have I already been talking about? What's a very obvious theme? And then when I start writing the content, which we'll get to later in the video, it's just, what do I want to say about it as an example? Okay. And there's a tool for that too. All right, so here's what's really cool about this is it also helps you start defining your category. So the way I work with clients is it's really 3 steps and it's really simple, right? When they come in and start working with me one-on-one, more or less as a mentor, right? It is the first thing is we're going to audit. We call it the autonomy audit. And that is just what you've done as a founder is you've created a business completely on your own, your hard work, your sweat, your white knuckling, and you just need an outside perspective from someone who's actually built a business that's been bigger than yours currently is, right? So for all of my clients, I built a business to 2.8 million before I exited a digital marketing agency. And a lot of my clients are still in kind of mid to high 6 figures for their business, right? As an example. And so simply by working their ass off to get to that point, now they know they need to level up, but they have no idea where they should be pulling strings. I always think of it as like a ball of yarn and you don't know which string to pull that will unravel the whole thing. It just looks like a messy ball of yarn to you. That's where the audit comes in. Next step is then we're building a retention engine because true freedom isn't in endless acquisition, getting 10 clients every quarter. It is in keeping the clients you do have for years, not months. So you don't have to keep chasing, right? Creating more demand than supply. We call it demand on command, right? Then the final one, that's where this little bit gets really fun because it's talking about across 4 transcripts. What we're really talking about is overloaded with optionality. I'm the person, my role is helping them remove 90% of stuff they don't need to do so that they can finally move on the 10% that matters, right? And it's this kind of concept of noise and signal. All my clients walk in with a ton of noise, a million things, boom, 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 going off. That's why their to-do lists are crazy long. That's why everything looks like an opportunity. That's why every time a client asks them a question, can you do this? Even though they know they don't want to do it, they feel scared. So they say yes and get the money, like all that kind of stuff, right? But what I help them do is give them that outside perspective to say 90% of what you encounter every day is not worth your time if you want to build a dream life that suits your lifestyle, building your business by design, not by default, right? That kind of stuff. And so what's really cool is the final step with clients is not only is this GPT helping define my role for how I create content and how I help clients, that's actually the final step of Autonomy Club and the mentorship is that you're going to create a moat around your business. How do you do that? With your point of view, with ideas you only have, with contrarian takes, all that sort of stuff, with industry differences that only you do, or storylines that only you have, like all this sort of stuff. And so that's how we create demand on command is people want to work with people, not necessarily other services, right? So by establishing yourself as a human being who other people can identify with in a perfect world, your entire career is probably serving somewhere between like 50 and 150 clients, right? Which means the more you lean into you, you become a magnet for those people and repel people you should never serve to begin with, which, if you're an established founder, might be some of the people you're serving with right now. And that's what I help clients more or less solve, right? So back to this, we have exactly, all the gold from the transcript. I'm going to now select a topic from this transcript that seems very, very dominant in terms of conversations I've had with clients already. And then I'm going to pull that and I'm going to start writing an actual post. And so let's find one to pull. I'm going to write the post and then we'll see you back here once I've decided it. So let's go with, I've been talking about to-do lists with clients a lot lately. So we're going to rock the to-do list. And I'm going to write a post on it. And then we're going to use another GPT called Does It Slap and see how it does. All right. So we'll see you in a minute. Welcome back. So we are creating a piece of content, right? What I do, I organize all my content into Notion. And so I actually went with the whole, if your to-do list stresses you out, it's lying to you, because the more and more I thought about it, I'm like, that's actually a concept I hadn't really thought of in terms of like it's lying to you part. And so let's actually see if that's something that could hit. But here's the deal. When you're really busy and you're running your business, like I said earlier, is you don't have all this time to just perfect and perfect and perfect and spend hours and hours writing, right? So it took me about 10 minutes to write this post, but we're going to turn it into 3 other posts using one simple GPT that I created called Does It Slap? So what we're basically going to do is we're going to copy this. Now, I haven't even gone through it, edited it, proofread it, so there might even be grammatical errors and all that sort of stuff. And we're going to go into a GPT called Does It Slap? And so I have a running conversation, and the whole point of the GPT is to basically rip it a new one. Because when it comes to producing content, I don't want my clients to fall flat on their face in public. I'd rather they fall flat on their face in private so that any time that they actually put something out to the public, they know it is absolute gold, right? And so what I expect with this, and I kind of intentionally did this when I wrote it, is it's going to tell me that I'm teaching too much, right? Because I actually give the system for how I help my clients reduce their to-do list from like 30 items basically down to 1 or 2, right? And how I've been doing that for years. And so what I'm going to say is just, hey, we got a new one here. So I'll just pop this in and say a new newsletter, please rate it. And what it's going to do is rate it on it doesn't slap, it almost slaps, or it slaps. And here we go. So it's saying it almost slaps, and it's going to tell me what's really positive about it, and then it's going to tell me areas where it's weak. Okay. So what's working? The subject and preview combo is really strong. Okay. So it likes the subject and the preview text. If this was an email, right? Relatability is high without being whiny. Um, Here's a really good system. Founders are drowning in decisions, not work. I actually pulled that directly from the Transcript Gold Miner, where it said founders are drowning in decisions, not work. They don't need freedom, they need filtration. I actually put that directly into the piece of copy because I actually thought that was really, really useful. So what's weak? The core rule isn't declared strongly enough. You imply it, but you don't own it. To-do lists fail because they mix decisions with execution. Okay, so that's really, really helpful. I circle the idea, but I never am explicit about it, right? You always want to be writing at basically a 3rd grade reading level so that your your 3rd grade niece or nephew could at least read it and understand it, right? So what's the core theme? It looks like I missed the mark on that. Middle section drags slightly. Airport metaphor is fine, but it lingers. I put an airport metaphor in there. The piece is strongest when it's directed, not illustrated. Okay, so it's saying I'm being a little bit too analogical, I guess. Circle 1 should feel more inevitable. Here's a helpful next step. This is the only step that actually matters. And my CTA is soft. Okay, so here's what it's going to say. Exactly what to tighten, not rewrite it. So somewhere I need the filter to add a sentence like this. I need to compress the metaphor, sharpen the circle, one framing, and upgrade it slightly. Then I have this thing called the 1 sip test because I love my coffee. I want basically the key takeaway to feel like that first sip of coffee that is absolutely either warms you up or tastes great or whatever, and then says, oh man, I can take on the day now. And that's the whole point of writing anything basically, or producing any piece of content, is that there's at least one key takeaway, and ideally just one, right? So where If you do too much, and I'm victim to this because I'm still learning content, is that I may include multiple takeaways in there. And it's the classic, like, if you give too many choices, then the default from the consumer is to do nothing, right? Which we want to avoid, obviously. So the one sip test is basically saying, can I walk away with one clear thing that really is positive, right? So it's saying, almost, I learned a good system, but I don't think, damn, that's why this never works, right? So it's saying that's what I'm missing. So it almost slaps. Now, for the sake of time in this video, what I might do is I might go back to the original and just start implementing the changes found in here, right? And typically it's going to keep it to like 6 or less, to where you can really tighten it up in a couple of minutes. But let's say I need this piece of content to go out in the next like 20 minutes and I'm pressed for time, then what I'm going to do is say, all right, I fully agree with all of your critiques. Here's what I want you to do. And by the way, when you're talking to GPT, treat it like a companion, right? Don't say make this better or write it for me. Give it specific feedback. So what I'm going to do with this, I'll just type this out, and then you can kind of see the full prompt when it's done. All right, so basically what I wrote is I want a very specific aim here based on the feedback it gave me, based on my original idea. I'm kind of combining all these things. And I was like, I want you to not hallucinate or rewrite my text, because then I find it really starts sounding like GPT and woo-woo and that sort of stuff. So I always kind of give this instruction because I want it to sound like me. I don't want to feel like I'm constantly reinventing the wheel again. We're under the presumption that we need to get this out really, really quickly, right? So don't completely invent new language, because then I'm going to have to go back and make it sound like me again, right? So don't hallucinate or rewrite my text. I want you to tighten and eliminate so it flows better. Update the call to action, make it an inevitable action for the reader. And that's just something I struggle with a little bit. My call to actions need more and more reps and refinement and that sort of stuff. And so I really have this guide me with that, because I feel like it's something I need to strengthen over time, right? Then we want to make it a banger of a one sip, which is, again, that feeling of just that first sip of coffee. And because I don't want to overteach or have too many takeaways, just one solid takeaway that makes the person reading it, who has a long to-do list, who says, that's me, I have a long to-do list, think, damn, I'm defeating myself by going about it this way. So let's launch this thing and see what it says. Ooh, okay. So what it really refined here, this is the key takeaway. Your to-do list isn't supposed to store work. It's supposed to eliminate decisions. And I fully agree with that. And that's kind of a contrarian take. Someone might not have heard that before, like a light bulb moment, like this light bulb back here. Okay, so basically what it's done is absolutely sounded like me. This is actually really, really good. Now, I know you've probably watched other videos where someone's demonstrating AI and that sort of stuff, and they're like, oh, that's pretty good. I am constantly evaluating this GPT to be like, would I say that out of my mouth, right? So there might be 1 or 2 sentences in here that I might tweak a little bit, but as I was reading it, I'm constantly thinking like, yep, I would say that in real time. Yep, I would say that to another person. Yep, yep, yep. And so I don't see this at all as GPT wrote my stuff. What it did was refine what I wrote, and then I get the final filter on would I say it that way, right? Because in 2026 and beyond, you should never have GPT write an original idea for you and then just copy and paste that in there. You're the creator. GPT is the refiner, right? But the beautiful thing about it is you don't have to send it to 20 friends and say, hey, let's refine this and get a bunch of different opinions and that sort of stuff. The more and more you train it on how you think, which this thing has been trained really, really well, and as you put in your posts and all that sort of stuff into something like this, it will absolutely get better and better. At the beginning, I had to do a lot of refining. Now it's basically doing the refining for me, which is really, really cool. And so here we have a post that came from a transcript idea that was dominant in terms of like, this is very top of mind for my target customer. And so now we can just put it in here, and I'll just put in something like V2, and we'll pop it in there, and I can come back to it later. So now we're going to go into the same GPT, and we're going to say, I'm pressed for time and I love the rewrite 100%. I want to leverage this into a Instagram carousel, Instagram reel script, LinkedIn post, keep it short, no guru BS, and then a YouTube outline with title options and multiple hooks, right? So again, you can, we're simulating like I don't have a ton of time, but from this, I'm essentially getting more than 3 potential uh, posts, right? So the reason these posts get clients is because it is speaking directly to a person, right? It's not saying top 10 ways to go viral. It's not saying 7 calendar hacks. It's none of this like how to education stuff. It is very specific to, I'm talking about a problem that you are having every single day. I'm talking about the basic insights on how I have personally solved it and help clients solve it. And then the call to action, as you can see from this, is inside Autonomy Club, I teach you how to reduce your workload with one clear daily action. If your list feels endless right now, reply to this email and I'll send you the video where I break the full system down. And that is the type of business I want to run is, hey, I gave you a ton of value. Now you tell me if you need more specific value. That's what's called pull energy, not push energy, right? They get to tell me if they want more instead of saying, here's the full thing, watch it, or buy my thing, or blah, 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 whatever it is. It's like, if you have this problem, I just gave you a ton of insight on how to solve it in a better way. If you want the full solve, you let me know, right? So now we're going back to does it slap? Perfect. I'll move fast and stay disciplined. Here we go. Instagram carousel. Again, this is trained on how I speak, right? So the first thing I can do is look at this and say, would I say that again, right? So your to-do list isn't helping you. It's lying to you. I would say that. I would say this. I would say this. This is the key element. They're drowning in decisions, not work. I would say this. The reality with founders, by the way, is that they're just, it feels like they have too much work. Really, they just said yes to too many things that should have never been in their purview at all, right? So the amount of work and overwhelm and anxiety you may be experiencing isn't from the work itself. It's from deciding to allow the work to creep in, right? I would say this. Yep, I said that yesterday. Said this. 100%, right? And keeping it really, really high level, insight-driven content, kind of show versus tell, that kind of stuff. Instagram Reel. So here's some hooks. Here's a script. Now, I don't really script a ton of any of my content, as you can tell by this video. We just kind of went for it. But sometimes I will, read the hook and that sort of stuff because obviously it's 80 cents of your marketing dollar, right? So looking at that, LinkedIn post. So this is a little bit too woo-woo. I wouldn't say this, right? So I would change the hook. If your to-do list stresses you out, it's not a motivation problem, it's a decision problem. I don't understand how motivation factors into to-do lists at all, right? So the GPT missed the mark there, but that's my filter and that kind of stuff, right? So if I were to reword this, I would say, if your to-do list stresses you out, it's not because it's full, right? Or something like that. Or it's not because there's 30 items on it, right? It's because there's no filter or something like that, right? So there you go. So it kind of hits the mark later on. YouTube outline. That's a pretty good title. Why to do this never gets shorter. But as you can see, like that could be universal appeal. That could be like top of funnel. That could get like hundreds to thousands of views or whatever on a YouTube channel. But the reality is the more generic and broad you make it, the more likely it is to do well in the algorithm. The more specific you make it, the more likely it is to generate clients, right? Like some of my colleagues and that sort of stuff in the space, I would say, are people who have really, really tiny channels. I mean, they're a little bit bigger than mine, like maybe 1,000 subscribers or something like that. But they might have a video will only do like 200 and 300 views and they'll get 4 or 5 clients from it. Whereas there are people with hundreds of thousands of subscribers or at least tens of thousands of subscribers have a video or two that have gone over 500,000 views and they can't get anybody because it's just too generic and there's no like clear and obvious like next step for that person who's watching the video to actually go deeper with them, right? So stop using your to-do list this way. That's a curiosity loop or like a curiosity gap, open loop, however you want to say it. And then here goes into hooks, and then here's the outline, right? So you can see it's more or less suggesting like 13-minute video, right? As an example. And now it's saying it slaps. What works? There's one insight and it's repeated cleanly. It's not over teaching. It's got the same spine and it feels calm, confident, and earned. So that kind of wraps up like how you can actually do this, right? Here's how I produce content my audience loves. First of all, I don't invent anything, right? I just come from the point of view of what's my natural skill set, solving client problems one-on-one in real time, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, we're recording those meetings, so a transcript shows up. From that transcript, I'm just going to pull that information and drop it into the transcript gold miner, which is specifically designed to not only give me the key insights from that conversation, but aggregate all the conversations I've had and told me where are the pillars, where's like the massive areas of opportunity, essentially, right? Then I pull one of those and I write content based on it, right? So I pull my favorite idea, I'm going to write content on it. And then to make sure I feel high conviction and make sure that I'm actually putting out something that isn't crap, I'm going to put it into Does It Slap as the GPT. And that sole job is to basically say, we need one key takeaway. We need to make sure that it's clear. We need to more or less like not overteach or give too much away that would result in somebody not wanting to go deeper with me, all that kind of stuff, right? It's based on that. And then once it's been completely refined within the same GPT, if you are short on time, and again, I always suggest that you write your own content, but if you're short on time and you have a really good foundational piece of content, a post, idea, whatever, then you can ask it to more or less aggregate or waterfall that out, so to speak. And that's where the leverage is. So from this one idea about having a really large to-do list, I have given the opportunity for people to go deeper with me by watching a video I actually include for my clients that I've already recorded. So again, that's a pre-existing asset. I don't have to invent anything. It also allows the exact same message across all platforms, just unique to each platform, so it hits that specific audience. So what are we doing here? We're defining our own category around, in this case, being really calm, confident, and more or less earning the lifestyle as an example, right? So from that, from one idea, we created a newsletter, we created a LinkedIn post, we created an Instagram reel, we created an Instagram carousel, and we created a YouTube video, right? And that is just the foundational stuff. If we want to change the angle of the hook, if we want to change a slightly different insight to the hook, now we can get 10 pieces. If we want to do it again, we can get 15, right? The best creators in the world, the best business owners who are using a personal brand to grow are not saying 1,000 things one way. They're saying one thing 1,000 ways. And this is the easiest and quickest way with like absolute refinement where you feel confident that I know how to do. So thank you so much for watching and sticking with me. Hopefully you got value out of this. If you are looking to go deeper and like kind of create this stuff, then feel free to drop a comment or respond. And if you are looking at all to have like one-on-one support, someone who is actually like rolling up the sleeves and working with you instead of just dumping a bunch of videos and coursework on you and homework on you, then you can find a link below where you can actually work with me inside of Autonomy. But until then, thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate you being here. And we'll see you in the next one.